Reel lived alone on the edge of the Earth's farming belt, where the sky was wide and the air was quiet. His small house stood in the middle of dry fields, surrounded by wooden fences, old machines, and rows of crops he worked on with his hands. Life was not easy, but it was peaceful. Each morning, Reel woke up early. He boiled tea on his small stove, fed the animals, and watered the plants. He didn't have much, just an old tractor, a few tools, and a rusty robot that no longer worked. But he had enough to survive, and that was enough for him. One morning, as the sun rose behind the hills, Reel noticed something strange. His old barn door was half open. He was sure he had closed it the night before. He picked up his walking stick and walked toward the barn carefully. Maybe a wild animal had wandered in during the night. When he pushed the door open, he stopped. There, lying on a pile of hay, was a small child. She looked no more than 5 years old. Her skin was pale blue and soft, and her hair shimmered like silver threads in the morning sun. Her eyes, wide with fear, glowed faintly like stars. She was wrapped in a strange cloth that sparkled with tiny lights. Reel blinked. He had seen alien pictures in books and on screens, but never in real life. He looked around, but there was no ship, no sign of anyone else, just the girl, alone and shaking. The child didn't speak. She stared at him and curled tighter into the hay. "It's okay," Reel said softly. He set his stick down and knelt slowly. "I won't hurt you." She didn't move. Her eyes followed his hands. Reel reached into his pocket and pulled out a small red fruit. "Here, you hungry?" The girl looked at it for a moment, then slowly took it with both hands. She sniffed it, then took a tiny bite. A small smile appeared on her face. Reel smiled back. "That's good, huh? I call it sunapple, grows out back." She nodded once. Reel looked around again. "Where did you come from, little one?" She didn't answer. Instead, she curled back into the hay and closed her eyes. Exhaustion had taken over. Reel stood quietly for a while, watching her breathe. Then he sighed, picked up an old blanket from the shelf, and gently covered her. "I guess you can stay for now." Later that day, Reel didn't go to the market. He stayed near the barn, checking in every hour. The girl slept most of the time, but when she woke, she looked more calm. He brought her more food, soup, bread, and clean water. She didn't say much, but her eyes followed him with curiosity. As night fell, she finally spoke. "Name?" Reel turned, surprised. "You talk?" She nodded slowly. "Name, you?" He chuckled. "I'm Reel." She looked down, then pointed at herself. He smiled. "You want a name?" She blinked, then nodded. Reel thought for a moment. "How about Luma? It means light in the old language. You glow just like light." She smiled and softly repeated, "Luma." Over the next few days, Luma stayed with Reel. She followed him around the farm, copying how he worked. She tried to hold the water bucket, though it was too heavy. She laughed when the chickens ran around her feet. She sat on the fence and watched the wind move the tall grass. Reel taught her simple words: sun, tree, bird, food, sky. She learned quickly. Every night, he gave her a place to sleep in the house, near the fireplace. He found an old toy in the back room, something his cousin left behind years ago. It made her eyes light up, but Reel still wondered, where did she come from? Why was she alone? One evening, as Luma slept, Reel climbed up the roof with his small telescope. He looked up at the stars. The sky was clear, and tiny lights blinked above. He had a strange feeling. Somewhere out there, someone was missing her. Someone might be looking, but until that day came, he would protect her. The next morning, something new appeared in the sky. A flash. Not lightning, not fire. It moved slowly and silently, like a silver line cutting through the blue. Reel lowered his watering can and stared. He didn't know it yet, but far above, a ship had arrived. A queen, searching for her lost child, had found a signal, and she was coming. Days turned into weeks, and the quiet farm began to feel different. Where once only Real's footsteps echoed across the land, now there were two sets. Luma followed him everywhere. She didn't speak much, but her presence was bright and warm, like a soft light in a dark room. Every morning, Real would hand her a small basket. She would walk beside him, picking fruits or pulling weeds with tiny hands. She liked watering the plants and feeding the chickens. The animals who once ran from strangers now gathered around her as if they knew she meant no harm. Real watched her with gentle eyes. He had always lived alone. He never had a family of his own. But with Luma there, the house felt full. Her laughter, quiet and strange, echoed through the walls. At night, she drew pictures on old paper stars, moons, and shapes he didn't recognize. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Luma pointed at the sky outside the window. "Home," she said softly. Real looked at the stars. "Up there?" She nodded. Then her face turned sad. Real didn't ask more. He simply said, "You're safe here, I promise." She leaned her head on his arm, and he placed a hand on her shoulder. A silent bond had grown between them, one of care, trust, and peace. Far above Earth, high in orbit, a large alien ship floated quietly. Its silver wings spread like the arms of a bird, holding energy and silence. Inside, Queen Zirel stood before a glowing screen. Her long robe shimmered with golden lines, and her crown pulsed with soft blue light. She stared at the signal, a small spark from the planet below, her daughter's life sign. Still alive, her hands trembled slightly. For months she had searched across galaxies. Her child had gone missing during a sudden attack on their travel ship. Many thought the girl was lost forever. But Zirel never gave up hope. Her voice was calm but firm. "Prepare a scout team. No weapons, observe only. My child is there, I feel it." The commander beside her bowed. "Yes, my queen." The ship lowered its shields and released a small pod. It shot quietly toward Earth, invisible to normal eyes. Back on the farm, Real stood by the fence, looking up. He had seen strange flashes in the sky twice now. Once during Luma's arrival, and now again. Something felt close. Watching, Luma stood beside him, holding his hand. Her eyes looked far, far away. The next night, strange footprints appeared near the outer field. Real found them while walking to the shed. The ground was dry, but these prints were deep, too deep for a human. And they glowed faintly, like soft moonlight. He didn't tell Luma, but she already knew. That evening, she didn't speak. She simply sat near the fire, hugging her knees. Real sat beside her. "You feel something, don't you?" She looked up, her eyes shining. Then she whispered, "They come." "Who?" he asked gently. She pointed upward. Real nodded. He didn't understand everything, but he believed her. That night, the scouts arrived. They moved silently through the trees, dressed in cloaks that shimmered like air. Their skin was smooth and bright like Luma's. They scanned the house, the barn, the animals. Their eyes paused on Luma's drawings near the window circles of stars, lines connecting planets, and a small figure beside a taller one. "She has bonded with the human," one scout said in a quiet voice. Another scanned her life signal. "Perfect match. It is the royal child. Shall we take her?" "No, the queen must see." Without a sound, they disappeared back into the night. The next morning, Real found a strange mark on the front door. A glowing blue circle, no bigger than a coin. He touched it and felt a soft hum under his skin. It didn't burn or hurt it, simply pulsed like a quiet heartbeat. Luma looked at it, then at him. "She knows now," Luma whispered. "Who?" Real asked. "My mother." Real's chest tightened. "She's coming here?" Luma nodded. He looked around the farm. He had no weapons, no strong machines, Just his hands, his land, and a little girl who had become like family. Still, he stood tall. "Then I'll wait," he said. Far above, Queen Zirel stood once more before her screen. The scouts had returned with pictures and words. They told her everything: the farm, the human, the peaceful child. They showed her Luma's drawings, her smiles, her sleep, her words. The queen said nothing for a long time. Then she whispered, "Set course. I will go myself." Back on Earth, Reel cooked a warm stew as the wind turned cold. Luma sat on the porch, her eyes fixed on the sky. The stars were brighter tonight. The moon was high. Everything felt still, like the world was holding its breath. Reel brought her a bowl. "Here, you need to eat." She took it silently. Then she looked up at him and said, "You are kind." Reel smiled. "You are brave." She looked down at the bowl, then back at the stars. "Tomorrow," she said, "she will come." Reel didn't know what would happen. But one thing was clear: this child, this alien, this little star-bright girl had become a part of his heart. No matter what came from the sky, he would not let her go without a reason. High above the Earth, the royal ship of the Varelian Empire floated in the black sea of space. It was quiet inside, but power hummed through its walls like the heartbeat of a giant. The ship was shaped like a silver wing, with long towers and glowing blue lines that pulsed like veins. In the central chamber, Queen Zirel stood alone. Her eyes, once calm and proud, now held a deep sadness. She looked at the image on the screen, her daughter, her small Luma, sitting on the wooden steps of a human farmhouse. The girl looked peaceful, happy. Zirel touched the screen with her fingers. "You are alive," she whispered. "And with a human." She turned to the captain. "Prepare the landing craft. I will go down myself." The captain bowed. "Yes, Your Grace. Should we alert the human governments?" "No," she said. "Not yet. I go as a mother, not a queen." On the farm, the morning was still. Reel stood near the fence, watching the sky. The clouds were thin, and the light was soft. But something in the air had changed. It was like the ground itself was waiting. Luma stood beside him, quiet. She held a small wooden carving in her hands, a tiny animal Reel had made for her last week. She didn't smile. She didn't speak. She only looked up. Reel placed a hand on her shoulder. "You sure she's coming?" Luma nodded slowly. "She comes today." Reel looked around his small world, his broken tractor, his rows of crops, his quiet animals. "Well," he said, "let's clean up a little. If we're getting visitors." Luma helped him brush the porch. She watered the plants. She even tried to fix the loose board near the barn. Reel smiled as she worked. "You're a hard worker," he said. "I learned from you," she replied softly. By midday, a strange sound filled the air. It was low at first, like a soft hum. Then it grew deeper, like thunder without a storm. The sky darkened, and a large shadow moved slowly over the field. Reel stepped forward and shielded his eyes. Above them, the Queen's ship appeared through the clouds. It moved gently, like a bird landing in silence. The ship floated down and stopped just above the Earth, a few feet from the field. A light opened beneath it, and a long silver path lowered to the ground. Luma gripped Reel's hand. A figure stepped down. Tall, graceful, and dressed in flowing white and gold, Queen Zirel walked across the grass. Her crown glowed faintly, and her eyes were full of emotion. Behind her walked two quiet guards, their faces hidden. She stopped a few steps away from Reel and Luma. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Luma let go of Reel's hand and stepped forward slowly. Zirel's eyes filled with tears. "My child." Luma looked up at her. "Mama?" Zirel knelt and opened her arms. Luma ran into them, and they held each other tightly. The Queen cried softly, holding her daughter for the first time in many long months. Reel stood quietly, his hat in his hands. He didn't speak. He just watched. After a moment, Zirel stood and turned to him. "You cared for her," she said. Real nodded. "She showed up in my barn. I didn't know what she was or where she came from, but she needed help." Zirel looked at him for a long moment. "You fed her. You kept her safe." "I tried," Real said. "She's special." "Yes," Zirel whispered. "She is." Luma looked between them. She reached out and took Real's hand again. Zirel noticed. Her face changed slightly, not with anger, but with thought. "She has grown close to you," Real nodded. "She's like family to me now." The queen walked slowly around the field, looking at the small house, the garden, the barn. Everything was simple. Small, but it was clear Luma had been happy here. She was not afraid here, Zirel said. "No," Real answered. "She laughed. She learned. She helped me with the work." "She's stronger than she looks," Zirel smiled faintly. "Yes, she always was." The queen turned to her guards. "Wait by the ship." They bowed and walked back up the path. Now alone, Zirel stepped closer to Real. "You are a farmer." She said. "Yes," Real replied. "Not much else." "You have no wealth, no power, no ships," Real nodded. "Just this land and time." Zirel looked down at Luma. "And still, my daughter chose you." "She chose kindness," Real said softly. "That's all I had to offer." Zirel was silent for a while. Then she asked, "Do you love her?" Real looked surprised, but answered quickly. "Yes, like my own." The queen breathed deeply. "Then you must help me with something difficult." "What is it?" "I want to take her home," Zirel said. "But I do not want to break her heart." Real looked at Luma. She held both their hands now, one in each. "She wants both worlds," he said. Zirel nodded. "Then I must find a way to give her both." Later that day, the queen's ship lifted back into the sky, but it did not leave Earth. It hovered far above, unseen by most. She had not taken Luma away. Not yet. She had made a promise instead. "We will build a place here," she had said. "A home where both her lives can exist. A place where she is not only a daughter of stars, but also a child of Earth." Real had agreed, and Luma had smiled. 2 days had passed since Queen Zirel's visit. The farm was quiet again, but it didn't feel the same. The air was filled with something new: hope, fear, and the feeling that something big was about to happen. Real stood in the field, checking his crops. Luma walked beside him, holding a small watering can. She wore a new robe, made from soft fabric the queen's people had left behind. It shimmered slightly in the sunlight, but she still wore her old boots, the ones Real gave her. She liked them more. "You think they'll come again?" Real asked. Luma nodded. "Soon. Mama sent them." Real looked at her. "Scouts again?" "Yes, to study, to understand." He sighed. "I hope they like what they see. It's just a farm." Luma smiled. "It's more than a farm, it's a home." That night, the scouts arrived. But this time, they didn't come to hide. They walked into the open field, dressed in shining silver suits. Their eyes were calm, and their movements slow and peaceful. Real was standing by the barn when he saw them. He didn't reach for a weapon, he didn't own one. Instead, he waved. One of them stepped forward and bowed slightly. "I am Iro," he said in a soft, clear voice. "We come with peace." Real nodded. "Name's Real. This is my farm." Iro looked around. "We have watched from above. We have studied. We are surprised." Real raised an eyebrow. "Surprised? You are simple. Yet you care for the royal child with full heart." Real chuckled. "Didn't know she was royal at first. She was just a scared little girl in my barn." Another scout stepped forward. Her name was Vera. She looked at Luma and smiled kindly. "She is strong. She carries our light." Luma smiled back. "I learned to plant carrots." Iro and Vera shared a quiet laugh. The scouts spent the next few days on the farm. They helped Reel fix the fence. They watched him feed the chickens and repair the broken water pipe. One of them even tried to milk a goat, but got kicked, which made Luma laugh harder than ever. The visitors were amazed. In their world, everything was advanced, clean, perfect, controlled. But here, life was full of dirt, struggle, and laughter. They began to understand why Luma had bonded with this place. Eero asked Reel one evening, "Why did you take her in?" Reel answered simply, "Because she needed someone, and I was there." Veera added, "Would all humans do the same?" Reel shook his head. "I don't know. Some would. Some wouldn't. But I did." That night, the scouts sent a full report to Queen. "Zyrel, she is loved," the message said. "The human protects her like family." A few days later, something new arrived, not from the sky, but from the city. Two humans in black suits drove up the dirt road in a clean, shiny vehicle. They said they were from the Earth Unity Council, a group that watched over peace between planets. Reel met them at the gate. "Can I help you?" One of them, a woman named Mira, showed him a small badge. "We're here because of a signal from this area. Alien activity." Reel nodded slowly. "You're a bit late. The Queen's already been here." The other officer, a man named Ren, looked surprised. "You've made contact?" "Yes," Reel replied. "And I've been raising her daughter." Myra frowned. "You mean the missing princess of the Varelian Empire?" "That's the one." The two officers stepped inside and saw Luma playing in the garden, digging a hole with her small hands. Ren whispered, "That's her?" "Yes," Reel said proudly. "That's Luma." Mira and Ren sat with Reel at the table inside the house. Luma sat nearby, listening quietly. Myra asked, "Do you understand how big this is?" Reel nodded. "I didn't plan it. It just happened." Ren looked serious. "Some people might not like this. They might say humans aren't ready for this kind of contact." Reel looked them in the eyes. "I wasn't ready either. But I did what I thought was right." Mira asked Luma gently, "Do you want to go with your people?" Luma shook her head. "I want both." The room fell silent. Finally, Mira said, "We'll need to talk to our leaders, but maybe this is how peace starts. One farm, one girl, one man." That evening, a second message came from Queen Zyrel. The alien ship returned, hovering high above the earth. A new path was lowered, not just for Zyrel this time, but for her engineers, her builders, and her teachers. She walked to the farm and stood beside Reel once more. "I have made a decision," she said. Reel waited quietly. "We will build a home here, a new place. It will be a bridge between two worlds. Luma will live here, and both of us will raise her together." Reel looked at Luma, then at the Queen. "Together," Zyrel nodded. "You taught her love. I will teach her legacy." Reel smiled. "Then, let's start building." In the days that followed, strange machines arrived. Some floated, some walked on thin legs. They dug, lifted, and shaped the land. Beside them worked Reel, Eero, Veera, and even Luma, laughing as she passed tools to both human and alien hands. The new home rose from the ground, half wood, half crystal. The roof was part solar panel, part starlight collector. Inside there were rooms filled with books, plants, and glowing maps of galaxies. But in the corner of one room, beside the window, stood the same old wooden chair from Reel's house. And Luma's first drawing, framed on the wall. It was a picture of a barn, a field, a starship, and 3 people holding hands. The sun was rising over the hills when the great silver ship returned. It floated slowly across the sky, silent and smooth, casting a soft shadow over the farm. The animals stopped. The birds flew away. Even the wind seemed to pause. Reel stood on the porch, wiping his hands on a towel. He had just finished feeding the chickens when he looked up and saw the ship again. But this time, it didn't just hover. It lowered quietly above the field beside the barn, the same field where Luma had first played in the dirt. A wide beam of blue light touched the ground. Then, from inside that light, the queen stepped out. She was dressed not in her royal armor, but in something lighter flowing fabric that shimmered like water under moonlight. Her crown was still on her head, but it glowed softly instead of shining brightly. This was not the same Queen Zarel who had ruled 1,000 star systems. This was Luma's mother. Luma stood at the fence, waiting. As the queen walked across the grass, Luma ran forward. "Mama!" Zarel knelt down, opening her arms. Luma hugged her tightly, holding on like she would never let go. Reel stood nearby, watching quietly. His heart was full, but he didn't speak. After a long moment, Zarel looked up and smiled at Reel. "She has grown stronger." "She's a farmer now," Reel said with a grin. Luma laughed. "I plant, I pull weeds, I chase chickens." Zarel raised an eyebrow. "Chickens?" Reel nodded. "She's not afraid of anything." They sat down near the tree where Reel often rested after work. Luma played in the grass, drawing circles in the dirt with a stick. Zarel and Reel talked. "The home we started building," she said, "is almost ready." "I saw the new frame go up yesterday," Reel replied. "Never thought I'd live in a house with glowing walls." "It will have both human and Varelian elements," she said. "A place where both of our worlds meet." Reel looked toward the hills. "That's good. She have everything she needs." Zarel's voice became softer. "What about what you need?" Reel was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I just want her to be safe. To grow. To smile like she does now." The queen looked at him with curious eyes. "You never asked for anything." "No reason to," Reel said simply. "I didn't help her to gain something. I helped her because she was alone." Zarel nodded. "That is rare, even among my people." Later that afternoon, Zarel walked through the farm with Luma. The child showed her everything: the swing Reel had built from rope and an old tire, the small garden she helped plant, and even her favorite rock, shaped like a heart. When they reached the barn, Luma stopped. "This is where I woke up." Zarel stepped inside and looked around. Dust floated in the warm light. The old hay was still there, and the blanket Reel had used to cover Luma was folded in the corner. Zarel touched the wooden beam above her head. "You were lost, and now I see. You were found." Luma looked up. "Mama, are you still sad?" Zarel knelt beside her. "Not anymore." "Because you found me?" "Yes," she said, brushing Luma's hair back. "And because you are loved here." That evening, a soft dinner was shared outside under the stars. The table was simple, made of wood, but Zarel sat there like it was a royal hall. Reel served bread and stew. Luma passed the spoons. The stars blinked above them, and for the first time, Queen Zarel laughed a warm, gentle sound. "You cook better than any palace chef," she told Reel. He smiled. "Don't tell them that. They might not let me visit." "You will always be welcome," she said. After dinner, Luma sat between them. Her head rested on Reel's arm, and her small fingers held her mother's hand. "I like this," she said. Sleepily. "What do you like?" Zarel asked. "Us. Together." As the stars grew brighter, Zarel stood and looked at the night sky. "I was afraid," she said. "Of what?" Reel asked. "That she would forget me. That Earth would take her heart." Reel stood beside her. "She didn't forget. And she didn't give it away. She shared it." Zarel nodded. "Yes, I see that now." They stood in silence. Then Zarel spoke again. "There is one more thing I must do." Reel turned to her. "I want to offer you something. Not a gift. A role." "What kind of role?" Zarel looked at Luma, now asleep in the chair beside the fire. "She will be part of both our worlds. She will need someone who understands both." Someone who has shown wisdom, patience, and heart. She looked directly at Real. I want you to be part of her life, not just as a farmer, but as her guardian, her teacher, her guide. Real was quiet. I'm just a man who grows crops, he said. I don't know royal things. Zyrel smiled. But you know what matters. Real looked at Luma. If she wants it, I'll do it. That night, the stars above the farm seemed to shine brighter than ever. Queen Zyrel returned to her ship, but she left behind something more important than machines or plans. She left her trust. Luma stayed behind that night, sleeping peacefully in her small bed, holding her stuffed animal close, and Real, standing by the window, watched the sky and whispered, "We'll take care of her. Together." The new home stood quietly in the middle of the field, half shining metal and half warm wood. Its walls glowed softly at night, and the roof caught both sunlight and starlight. The builders were gone now. The noise had ended. Only calm remained inside. The home, there were rooms filled with books, strange learning tools, and small things. Luma loved: drawings, toys, stones she had collected from the garden. In the corner of the main room stood a chair made of crystal and carved wood, a symbol of two worlds living as one. Real sat on the porch, sharpening a small tool. He had just finished cleaning the barn. The animals were fed. The crops were watered. Everything was in order. But inside him, his heart was not calm. Queen Zyrel was coming again. And this time, she had come to speak not just as a mother, but as a ruler. Luma stood in front of the mirror. She was wearing a new dress, white and blue, with soft threads of gold woven through the sleeves. It had been sent by her people. But she still wore her old boots. She looked at herself quietly. Then she turned toward Real. "Do I look different?" Real smiled gently. "You look like you, just a little shinier." Luma giggled. Then her smile faded. "She wants me to come back," Real nodded. "She misses you. You're her daughter." Luma walked to the window. The sky was clear, but she could feel it. The ship was close. "She has a world waiting for me." Luma whispered. Double quotes, yes. Real said, "A world full of stars." "But you have this," she said, pointing to the fields, "and the goats, and the warm soup." Real chuckled. "Not as exciting, but it's home." Luma turned to him. "Can I have both?" Real looked at her seriously. "I think that's what today is about, you choosing." The ship came before sunset. It hovered just above the garden, then slowly lowered a path of soft light. Queen Zyrel stepped down with calm steps. She wore a silver cloak, but no crown today. Her face was calm, but her eyes were deep with emotion. Real and Luma waited by the new home. When the queen reached them, she greeted them both with a soft smile. "Luma," she said, kneeling down, "you have grown taller." Luma nodded. "I eat a lot of soup." Zyrel smiled, then stood and looked at Real. "Thank you for inviting me into your home." Real nodded. "It's your home too now." They walked inside together. Inside, the three sat around the small table. On it were cups of warm tea and a plate of fresh fruit. Zyrel looked around at the room, the mix of alien crystals and wooden shelves. It was beautiful, peaceful. "This is what I wanted," she said softly. "A place where she can belong." Real nodded. "She built it with us." Zyrel looked at Luma. "Now it is time to decide." Luma sat up straight. "I know." Zyrel's voice became gentle. "Your people want you to come home. You are part of the royal line. You will learn history, languages, and leadership. There's much waiting for you." Luma looked down. "But here," Zyrel continued, "you have grown free. You have learned kindness, patience, and the meaning of family. I see that now." Real didn't speak. He simply looked at Luma and waited. Zyrel then said, "So today, I give you the choice." The room became quiet. Luma looked at both of them. Then she asked, "Can I live in both?" Zyrel raised her eyebrows. Both? Yes, Luma said. I want to learn with you. I want to visit the stars. But I also want to stay here. I want to help Reel with the animals. I want to plant seeds. I want to grow up in both skies. Zyrel and Reel looked at each other. Then Zyrel slowly smiled. A life between two worlds? Luma nodded. Yes. Reel added, maybe she doesn't need to belong to just one. Zyrel thought for a moment. Then she stood. Then we shall make it possible. The next day, plans were made. The Queen's people began building a small landing pad near the back field. A silver circle that would allow small ships to come and go. Luma would spend her days between both worlds. Some days, she would learn Virelian wisdom in the ship above. Other days, she would run barefoot through the soil, helping Reel feed the chickens. Vera, one of the alien teachers, moved into the house to stay close. She helped Luma understand more of her people's language. In return, Luma taught her how to bake sweet bread from old Earth recipes. Zyrel returned to her ship but promised to visit often. This planet, she said, has become part of my heart. One night, Luma stood outside with Reel. The stars above twinkled like tiny fires in the sky. The moon was full. Do you ever want to go to space? She asked him. Reel looked up. I think I already have. She looked confused. He smiled. You brought the stars here. Luma laughed and leaned against his side. You brought me home. They stayed like that for a long while, under one sky, but with two hearts. It had been 6 full moons since the Queen's promise. 6 months of quiet change, shared learning, and a life built between two very different worlds. The farm looked the same from a distance, rows of crops, a small wooden house, the same wide sky. But now, if someone came closer, they would see new things. A glowing circle behind the barn where ships gently landed, silver tools beside farming ones, and maps of stars pinned beside weather charts. Inside the house, laughter often filled the air, human laughter mixed with soft Virelian sounds. And at the center of it all was Luma. She rose early each morning. Some days she joined Reel to feed the goats and check the soil. Other days, a ship would land, and she would fly up to the stars for her royal lessons, studying ancient histories, languages, and peaceful diplomacy. Her teachers were kind. They understood her connection to Earth, and whenever she returned to the farm, they always sent her home with books, gifts, or messages for Reel. Reel didn't read alien texts much, but he always listened when Luma explained them. He had his own lessons to give: how to fix a broken pipe with simple tools, how to check the wind to know if rain was coming, and how to care for something even when it gave nothing back. One afternoon, while planting new seeds, Luma looked at him and asked, "Do you think I can really be both?" Reel didn't answer right away. He pressed a seed into the ground and covered it gently with soil. Then he said, "A seed grows where it's planted, but the wind can carry its spirit anywhere. You're planted here, little one, but you belong to the stars too." Luma smiled. "So, I'm both ground and sky?" Reel chuckled. "You're a storm and a garden all at once." One bright morning, a new message came from Queen Zyrel. A small silver drone flew down from the sky and landed gently near the porch. Luma opened it carefully. Inside was a glowing crystal disc and a short letter written in both Virelian and Earth tongue. Reel read the simple part. "The Council of Stars wishes to visit Earth. They asked to meet the human who raised my daughter. They call him the Bridge." Reel stared at the letter for a long time. Luma clapped her hands with joy. "They want to meet you." Reel scratched his head. "Me? I'm just a farmer." Luma shook her head. "You're not just anything." The Council of Stars arrived 3 days later. A large ship shaped like a pearl hovered in the sky. From it came 3 beings, one from Zyrel's empire, one from the peaceful Jalari race, and one from the deep voice kind called Maru. They were powerful, wise, and very curious. Reel had cleaned up, wore a clean shirt, and stood straight. But he still held a gardening tool in one hand. The council asked many questions. How did you understand her? Why did you not report her to your government? What did you teach her? Reel answered each one with truth and calmness. I didn't understand her words at first, he said, but I saw fear. And I knew what it looked like to be alone. I didn't report her because she was just a child, not a threat. I taught her how to grow things, how to be patient, and how to laugh. The Moru elder, who rarely spoke, said, You raised a star flame like a flower. Reel smiled. She bloomed herself. I just gave her space. After the visit, the council declared something surprising. A new project would begin, the Garden of Peace, where children from many worlds would come to learn on Earth. Guided by both humans and Varelians, Reel would be one of the first humans to help teach. Not through books or screens, but through living. Close to the land, Luma would be the first student. The news reached across galaxies. Some were unsure, some were excited, but all watched closely. Back at the farm, Reel sat with Luma on the fence, watching the sky turn orange. You're going to be famous, he said with a grin. She laughed. Not without you. Seasons passed. The farm changed again. A second house was built beside the first larger, with classrooms and rooms for visitors. Aliens came one by one, not to conquer or fight, but to learn how Reel lived. The first Jalari child to step into the garden bent down and touched the dirt with glowing fingers. Warm, he said, like home. Reel shook his hand and said, Welcome to Earth. Queen Zirel visited often now. She helped design lessons about peace, kindness, and shared stories of stars. Sometimes late at night, she and Reel would walk through the fields, talking like old friends. One evening, Luma stood before a small group of children, some human, some alien. She held a seed in her hand. My name is Luma, she said. I come from the stars, and I grew up on this soil, she pointed to the seed. This is a small thing, but with care, it can grow tall and strong. That's what happened to me. And it can happen to all of us. The children clapped. The stars above seemed to shine brighter. Years later, stories would be told of the poor farmer who took in a lost child from the stars. They would speak of the queen who trusted that farmer, and the child who became a bridge between galaxies. And in the middle of those stories, there would always be a small farm. A patch of earth where something greater than power was grown: hope.